Numbers are important. At least, that is what I've been told all throughout college. When I started my first semester in the teaching program at Kent State, I was so excited to get into the classroom. I was so ready to get kids excited and interested in learning all that they could. At first, it seemed like that was exactly what we got to do. But soon, I was given the job to test their knowledge. These were preschoolers, and I had to see if they were ready for kindergarten. So I sat with each one and saw how many letters, both lowercase and uppercase, that they could tell me. Then how many numbers, then seeing if they could count a group of objects. They each got a score, 15 out of 26, 20 out of 26, 26 out of 26. These numbers, these scores, represented if they were ready for kindergarten. By my third semester, we were doing running records with the students in elementary classrooms, checking their fry words and seeing how well they could read. The numbers continued, 50 out of 100, 77 out of 100, 100 out of 100. I knew the students could be more than what these numbers labeled them as, if only they could change their perspective, if only they could be resilient. When it seemed like there was no end in sight, I was sent a slam poem by my professor, by Taylor Malley. The only description she wrote was, "A little pick-me-up." In the poem, a teacher is asked what he makes. He replies in excess, but not once does he mention money. Instead, he talks about the difference that he makes in the classroom and in the lives of the students. One moment speaks to me the most. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and I can make an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you give me any less than your very best? This is what I wanted to make in class. This is the difference I wanted for my students. So when I started my first teaching position as a long-term sub in a 5th grade math class, I thought about how I could work with these numbers and scores and teach children to be resilient. One student struggled a lot. He had gotten an F in every quarter in the grade book. When I started there, the end of the 3rd quarter was approaching, and he had an F from the teacher I was subbing for. I wanted to get to know him. I knew he was smart. I mean, all those sassy comebacks that left me speechless, he just had to be smart. So when he had detention, I asked the principal if he could come into my room instead. I got to know him. I spoke to him like someone with a brain in their head. When he had his first assignment back from me, he got a 4 out of 20. I put a big +4, a smiley face sticker, and a job well done. When he asked me about it, I told him, you knew 4 things. You knew this question about division, and you knew what a quotient was. You had thoughts in your head, and I bet if we work hard, you can know even more next time. By the end of the year, he had a C- in math class. I had him show the principal, and I had him show his teacher from last year, and the other 5th grade teacher, and anyone that he wanted to show. That C-, it did not get him into the award ceremony. It did not reflect well on his GPA, but that C- was fantastic. At the end of the year, when he took his end-of-the-year 5th grade test, he scored in the 20th percentile. When he asked me what that meant, I said it meant you knew more than 20% of all students who took that test. He worked hard. He didn't dare to give me any less than his very best. He was resilient. I've thought about that student a lot this year, how his best could change from one quarter to the next. My best has changed. I started last year in March with a 2-week vacation, nice little break from school, get my brain back together. When the end of the 2 weeks was approaching, I started to think about how I could work with these numbers and scores and get children to be resilient. Then we were told we wouldn't be coming back in April, and that now we had to teach live lessons online. And I thought there was no way I could do that. How was I supposed to get all the students Chromebooks and get the students on programs, some of which we'd never even seen? Questions were flying at me from all different places, and I thought there was no way I could help everyone. Then in May, I thought I'd reached my best. 2 live lessons a week, 60% attendance, and 85% of parents responding. The year ended, and it was anticlimactic, to say the least. I never really got to say goodbye, and some of those students I never even saw again after the first 2 weeks. Then in August, We were told that we would be remaining online for the foreseeable future, and that now we had to teach live lessons every day, multiple times a day, and I thought there was no way that I could do that. I had given my best, hadn't I? How was I supposed to work with students who I'd never met, families I'd never talked to, on programs that I'd never seen? But then I thought about my student. I knew some things. I knew how to use Google Classroom and how to contact parents who spoke different languages with the use of Class Dojo. I knew how to work with other teachers and how to contact my principal, and what I didn't know, I could work hard to learn. I learned how to use a virtual classroom and create my own Bitmojis, and I learned how to use the new reading program, and I spent hours making a virtual library. And I learned how to make lesson plans with the other third grade teacher and create lessons that were interactive and fun. And just like my student, I went around and I showed everyone when I was done. I showed my parents and my grandparents and my friends and anyone that I wanted to show that I had worked hard, that I was resilient. We were told that we needed to come back in October, that if we didn't, the consequences would be too much, that the students couldn't be successful. But what about the consequences if we did come back? How could we prepare them after we'd already figured all of these things out? Now that we'd gotten a hang of it, wouldn't the consequences be bad if we did come back? Then we were told we needed to come back in January, that if we didn't, again, the consequences could be too great, as well as the consequences if we did come back. And then we were told we needed to come back in February. All these changing times and all this talk of consequences reminds me of a story that my father once told me. The story goes like this. A long time ago, there was a man named Farmer Lee. And one day, while he was out plowing the fields, his horse ran away. And all the townspeople came around and they said, Farmer Lee, how horrible, this is awful, your horse is gone, this is terrible. And he said, maybe. The next day, the horse came back and it brought with it 10 new wild horses. And all the townspeople came around and said, Farmer Lee, how wonderful, you brought this horse, you have 10 new horses, this is fantastic. And he said, maybe. The next day, his son was breaking in one of the wild horses and he fell off and broke his leg and he was all laid up. And all the townspeople came around and they said, Farmer Lee, how horrible, your son, he's broken his leg, this is terrible. And he said, maybe. The next day, the conscription officers came, but when they saw that his son was laid up, they did not draft him. And all the townspeople came around and said, Farmer Lee, how wonderful. Your son wasn't drafted. This is fantastic. And he said, maybe. The story goes on, but the point I remember is this, is that consequences, whether good or bad, we never know truly what they will be. All we know is how we feel and react to them in the moment. All we know is that our perspectives can make us resilient. Being resilient is important. Knowing your best can change. Knowing the power of maybe. If students can get 100 out of 100, then they better, because I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and I can make an A- feel like a slap in the face. The only thing that will never change is that teaching is important, but it is how we view it that makes all the difference. Thank you.